I can't sit here and be like the indie guy on his high horse. I've been able to be influenced by a wider variety of material. They just said, "Let me get your novel. I saw you on social media." That blew my mind. As long as my goal is to get better with what I'm doing, I think that's the main focus. If all this went away, when I get up tomorrow morning, I'm still pulling out my sketch pad and I'm drawing, whether anybody's gonna see it or not.
You know, there's only 19% of you watching that are actually subscribed to my channel. This channel is dedicated to helping you get tips and strategies as you go along on your art journey. So can you do me a favor, please? Like, share, subscribe. And now that I'm done my e-begging, let's jump into these. Hello, everybody. Welcome to I forgot the name of my show. Wow. Art Talk Connect, episode 8. We are here with Mr. Gene Willoughby. He is the creator of Sunstrom, right?
Yeah, the Sunstroms. Yep.
He is going to talk to us about navigating the indie scene as an older creator. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him and let him explain his origin story and how he became a comic creator.
My origin story is basically my mom. I grew up with her being an English teacher, and so she was always, giving me things to read. She ended up bringing home, and this is early '80s. She ended up bringing home an issue of um, Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Incredible Hulk, and that started my wanting to read more comics. There was a cartoon called Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends back in the day, probably about '85. And what they would do on that show is they give you the core cast, Spider-Man, Firestar, Iceman, but then they would always introduce you to some part of the Marvel universe that you never like would really be into if you weren't like a hardcore comics reader. So you got to meet like X-Men and Namor and people like that. And so that really got me really going and wanting to read more comics. And I got my first subscription from there. And I've always been into drawing, and so it just kind of segued and just kind of came together. And I've been drawing and telling stories ever since.
Did you ever at a point want to work for like Marvel or any of the big companies?
That's always a dream. I can't sit here and be like the indie guy on his high horse and be like, no, I would never want to do any mainstream work. Of course, that's something that you dream of as a kid. It's always been more important to me to actually draw my own stories. And so I've always had my own ideas, and that's been the focus of what I wanted to do, and anything mainstream that comes from that, of course, is welcome.
Now, what was your first step into the indie scene?
2013, I started um, writing a comic book script. It was 5 issues, and it wasn't called the Sunstroms at that point, but that's what it turned into. Once I got those 5 issues written, um, I wasn't sure about the comic book part of it, and so I turned those 5 scripts into a novel. I put more meat on the bones from the comic book script and just wrote it as a full novel with chapters. And I put that out in 2017. The novel coming out and me doing Comic Cons, that both happened at the same time. So that was the very first thing that I had was my novel, and I started doing posters based on the characters in the novel. And from there, people started wanting to see comics. When the pandemic hit, I'm a teacher, so I had like a year at home. I was teaching on the computer, but I had a lot of other free time, and I did my comic book in 2020 during that year, and that was the first issue. And then from there, I've just been adding to that story at least once a year.
Let's get into the story.
The Sunstroms is about a family of superheroes. They end up losing both parents in battle. Their oldest son's named Sam. He comes home, gets his siblings together. They form a team to take over for mom and dad, and then they realize they've inherited all of their parents' enemies and responsibilities, which makes their lives totally blow up and go haywire. And that novel I was talking about gives you that complete origin story. And then the comic book gives you the continuing adventures of that team. I'm on the third issue now. Issue 4 is coming up.
Very nice. And what inspired that story?
That story came from a couple of places. One, I wanted to do superheroes, but I wanted them to be a family. And I looked at all my family relationships. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm somebody's brother, I'm somebody's son. And so I kind of took from all those different relationships and poured that into the story. The second thing was I had a whole universe of characters I wanted to introduce. And since these characters are more of the scientific, if you look at the comic book cover, it's the Sunstrom's research and exploration team. And so with them being researchers and explorers, I felt like that was the perfect group to kind of meet all the other areas of my universe that I wanted to show. And you kind of meet everything else that I have to offer through them.
Got you. That's cool. I see at convention. Your setup is, let me just, your setup is way more interesting looking than mine. I get to.
I'm gonna credit my wife with that. She's our manager at Hammer Blam, and she's really good at making sure that our setup is nice and um, making sure that we are presenting in a way that makes people want to come by the table.
So Hammer Blam, that's the company, right?
Yes.
When did you decide to make this an actual company instead of just having a comic book?
That all happened at the beginning. I'm big on an imprint. You know, I grew up in the 90s, and you know, independent labels were the thing at that time. And so I was inspired by all of the independent labels that I saw. I wanted my work to be under a banner, and be able to have a name and a logo. And so Hammer Blam was a name that I had. And so we came up with a logo for that, and we've been publishing under that ever since.
What other things influence your art style?
I was inspired a lot by the original Image guys when they came out in 91, 92 with their independent books. But even before that, Jack Kirby, John Byrne, Walt Simonson, Dennis Cowan, people like that. That I looked at their books and really started going over their pages and looking at, okay, how are they making my eye go through this page and follow this story? I've always been a fan of the writer that could make it seem like it was easy to read this. You know what I'm saying?
SAT words and stuff, and it try to make it more than it is.
Right. And so when it comes to comics, one of the things I was interested in is, you know, there are certain comics you read and you just turn the page. You turn the page. It's really easy to get through it. So what's causing that to happen? And so I've always been interested in that and studying that.
Now, as you get older, because you say you started selling in 2017.
Yeah.
Do you feel as you get older, your approach to storytelling is starting to change as well?
I think I'm learning more. I try to still be a student. And one of the things I'm into right now is going back to, because when you're a kid, some of the things you don't know what it is you're really looking at.
Right.
You're enjoying it, but you don't know what's making it work.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've gotten really interested in, going back to some of the artists I grew up on, you know, buying some of those omnibuses and some of those large volumes, and going back and just kind of looking at those pages as a student now, instead of I'm just enjoying reading Fantastic Four or whatever. Going back and looking at, okay, what made this work? What was it I liked about it? And so I'm still trying to be a student of the game, still trying to study the artists I enjoy, and not feel like, well, I've got books out, so I'm out here now. You know, it's just I'm still looking at it as as I'm learning.
Yeah, you just never stop learning. I think that's a very like fundamental thing of being an indie creator. You're
Yeah,
always open to new advice and experiences from other people.
that's right.
Yeah. That's how I actually started doing more of these podcasts because I was like, I have my own insight. I've been doing comics since early 2000s, around 08, 09.
Hmm.
And I was selling with my friends at the time.
Okay.
It was like right out of high school. But I have a lot of experience, even though I took a big hiatus between then and from then and now.
Hmm.
I have a lot of experience, but it's always great to have insight from other people that are in the game. You know what I mean?
Right. That's right.
So, how many conventions do you do a year?
It comes out to about one a month because sometimes I'll do two in a month
Right.
and take another month off. So it ends up being about 12 during the year,
Got you.
give or take. There's a couple of months during the year where sometimes it's difficult to find one. So
And do you just stay on the East Coast?
yeah,
How would you compare your tabling now compared to back then when you first started?
it was a lot simpler at the beginning because all I had was the novel
Right.
and the 5 or 6 prints that I was bringing to the table. I did a source book for the novel, and then there was issue 1, and then 2 and 3, and then it started being more fan art that I started doing, and then also more. I started having trading cards and things like that. So then it became more of a challenge of how to have more in that same space and still make it look the way it needs to look and not cluttered and everything like that. So I'm not gonna say it was a challenge, but I'm gonna say it was more thought that had to go into it. The more things you put on the table.
Speaking of which, we're going to sidetrack. Do you have any
Yeah.
more like promotional ideas? Because that's a good idea, like trading cards and
Hmm.
maybe like stickers and stuff. Do you have any more promotional ideas for your comic that other people might try?
The trading cards have done pretty well. I've done the prints of my characters. I'm looking into trying to see what I can get done as far as action figures and statues and a couple of Funko Pops and things like that. But that's the kind of the avenue I want to go.
Yeah, I wanted to do action figures too. They're expensive.
That's one of the things that's great about going to these conventions because you start to meet people that do those types of things. Like I got some cups made
Mhm.
for my last Kickstarter,
Mhm.
and the family that made the cups happened to be a couple tables down from me at a show,
Gotcha.
and we just kind of got together and did it. And so sometimes at some of these conventions you'll meet people that can actually do some Kickstarter ideas for you.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video. I appreciate it. And if you want to support the channel, go to frayofficial.com. I have games, comics, artwork, a lot of stuff over there. So have at it. But back to the video. Yeah, it's very important to network with people.
Right.
A lot of people go to these conventions and they kind of just stay in their own shell and draw on their sketchbook till people walk up to them. And it's like, that's valuable networking
Mhm.
time. Talk
Yeah.
to your neighbors, talk
Yeah.
to the person
Yep.
across from you. Do you feel like there's a difference um you being older than most because there's a lot of people in the indie scene that are younger. It seems like as the years go on, there's younger and younger people because I guess
Yeah.
technology and like digital prints and all that stuff. So it's like you'll
Right.
be surrounded by 16, 17-year olds, early 20s. Do you ever feel like a difference there?
I try to be oblivious to that type of thing because I try to just stay focused on making my little world better,
Right. Hmm.
and I try not to get involved in comparing myself to somebody else's thing that they have going on. I know with my age and my experiences, I bring something that others may not.
Right.
Um, I worked in retail for a long time. Um, I was with toy stores specifically. So I got an opportunity to learn what companies were doing when they were putting certain types of art on the box, and how to present logos and things like that. So those are things that I really studied, and so I can bring that to the table. Just and that's just my age.
Right.
So I try not to compare myself to anybody else. I try to um, just kind of stay in my lane, and as long as my goal is to get better with what I'm doing,
Right.
um, I think that's the main focus.
What kind of advice would you give to a person who may feel like this is a young person's game,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if I'm really qualified to be doing this anymore?
I would ask, do you love what you're doing?
Mm.
And as long as you love what you're doing, and you still have that level of love where you would do it for free, which is where I'm at. Because even if all this went away, when I get up tomorrow morning, I'm still pulling out my sketch pad and I'm drawing, whether anybody's gonna see it or not, because
Right.
I got that little kid thing in me that just won't quit on that level. So
Mhm.
um if you love it like that, I don't think I don't think there's anything that's gonna stop you from doing what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I couldn't stop myself if I tried. Like,
Right, right.
even when I took my long hiatus, like I had the game for like 10 years going to conventions, but I was always still drawing all the time. I had a sketchbooks full of stuff. I just didn't put anything out there. But I knew I had to keep
And
doing it because I couldn't stop myself from doing it. So,
right, exactly. Like case in point, I'm a teacher. I teach ninth and 10th grade. I got a huge calendar on my desk, and if you would come by my desk, there's all kind of drawings and doodling on that calendar,
right.
and students will come by my desk. Mr. Willoughby, you always drawing. I can't help it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So as long as you love it on that level, I don't think there's anything that can stop you.
Do you teach art?
No, I teach English.
Do you have any like fans in your classroom of your work?
Well, I have a lot of kids that are fans of the medium, and I think that's the big thing that I get to connect with them on,
Mm.
is they get to see what I've done, and it's like, oh, he knows what he's talking about, and so then I become the guy that they'll come to about their sketchbook, or hey, check this out. And as a, and not to put anybody else down, but you know, some of your classically trained teachers don't see the value in that,
Right.
and and they're not thinking about it on that level. So I can kind of help some of these students. That I've had students come to me and say, well, how do I actually get into comics?
Right.
And so I can show them a couple of books that they need to get, or give them some ideas and some different perspectives. So I think I can connect with them on that level. I have a lot of students in the manga, and I have a lot of students who are actually very good, and so that's been an eye opener for me to see some of the students that are 15 and 16 that are coming up, and being like, wow, y'all are really doing it,
Right.
so
It's inspiring, but sometimes I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes I'm like, it's so much easier for you now. Like, because it's like I remember Lulu.com was the only like self-publishing company that we can find, and it was expensive to get our books done. We paid
Yeah.
we paid like $700 for like I think it was like 100 or so books.
Hmm.
But it's like now I use kablam.com, and they specialize in comics and mangas, and I pay like $5 a book.
Yeah, and that's my story as well. I started out with Lulu. My first novel was Lulu,
Hmm.
and so similar pricing, um, and I went to Kablam for the rest of it, and so um, yeah, that's like my exact story as far as putting books out. So
And then with like social media, like that was foreign to me when I when they first started putting like I know it took me at least like 6 or 7 years into Instagram to finally be like, oh, maybe I should start promoting my stuff on Instagram.
Right.
You have these kids and they've grown up with all these social medias. They go to the convention and people like flocking to their tables and you're like, I don't know you. But it's like, it's because they have like 100K
Mm-hmm.
followers already on Instagram that's seeing them. So they're coming to
Right.
them in person. Do you feel the need to keep up
Yeah.
with that, their social media?
Not the need, it's just the fact that you get to a point where you realize that that's where we are as a society. And if you're going to be putting material out, I mean, it's got to be on social media. I mean, that's, to me at this point, that's just the basics now. It's just you got to have your platforms and putting it on there. And at some point, at some level, just trying to fight these algorithms and trying to figure out, what's the best way to keep people seeing it. It was weirdest thing to me. This is like probably maybe my second year,
Mhm.
and I had somebody come to my table, and I didn't even have to pitch the story. They just said, "Let me get your novel. I saw you on social media," and that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so it lets you know how that let me know how important it was at that point.
Do you do better in person or do you do better online sales?
I always do better in person.
Yeah, I've had a hard time navigating trying to get stuff online. So, like, I have my own store on my website. Trying to drive somebody to a website, it's kind of like more
Mhm.
difficult. Do you have any success with online sales?
Through my Kickstarters, yes, and through my newsletter. And my newsletters they do better than social media as far as sales, because your newsletter is going to hit everybody on that mailing list, and they get a an honest opportunity to see what you're going to do, because a lot of people follow you, but because of the algorithm, it may be only a third or less of the people that follow you that see your post. And so
Right. Yeah.
the newsletter gives you an opportunity to, if you have 100 people on your newsletter, 100 people will get it, and you don't have to worry about, well, only 9 people saw what I posted today. The Kickstarters have done well for me, and also my newsletter has done well. Social media is hit and miss, but I still feel like you got to use it.
So, you were talking earlier about your strengths as an older artist. Do you have any other strengths you think you bring to the table over the youth right now?
I think, and I don't know if this is age or not, so I'm just throwing stuff out there. I guess I've been able to be influenced by a wider variety of material. I come from a generation that um, just has a different way of interacting with people in person, things like that. And so um, I and again, I don't know if that's generational or not, but I just know, um, like I said, I've got influences in my art and in my writing that go back to like the 70s. And so
Right.
um, I can pull from all of that. And I've read a lot of different things, and so, and not saying that a younger person hasn't, because they can read the same stuff and be influenced by the same things, but um, there's nothing like being going to the spinner racks back in the day, and being able to see all the different books and all of that. And so
Miss those days.
right.
That's where I would my parents, they just like leave me in the comic shop. They'd be like, we'll be back in an hour. Like,
Yep. Yep, those were the days, man.
finally, what is the last bit of information you would give to older artists?
Don't try to be anybody but yourself. I mean, that's the biggest thing. um uh, uh, that that comparison thing is such a weight to have on your back, because you'll never beat it. Whatever you bring as an artist or a writer, realize that that's very valuable, and nobody can be that except you, and push that to the maximum level that you can push it.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Gene.
Yes, sir.
It's been actually very insightful, to be quite honest. Like, getting to know your knowledge, getting to know your work and stuff. Um, let everybody know where they can
I
find
appreciate
you
that.
and all your work.
I'm on Instagram at Sunstrom's Novel, And my website is hammerblam.myshopify.com if you're interested in checking out my books.
All right. I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you very much for your time once again.
All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.